Hello and welcome back to the Refold channel. In this video, you're going to learn how to do intensive listening. Intensive listening is a, listening exercise which is going to help you push your abilities in your target language. Intensive listening is a workout activity, which means you should be pushing yourself beyond your limits and you should be a little bit tired after doing it. We recommend intensive listening for people who are trying to bridge the gap between their reading ability and their listening ability by bringing their reading up to their listening, or for people who are looking to take their reading to the next level and start to listen more. Generally, you should be able to watch a TV show made for native speakers if you're going slowly and maybe doing a few lookups here and there, but you should never be confused by what's happening. And you should definitely not struggle with the most basic words of the language. There are lots of different variations on how you can do intensive listening depending on what content you have available, but I'm going to be doing it with a TV show since that's the most general example I have. In order to do intensive listening effectively, there's a few things that you want to have set up first. A meta layer, I'll be using ASB Player, a show with subtitles or transcripts, a way to look up unknown words, which I'll be using VocabSieve for, and a comfortable environment where you can focus, specifically on the audio, so headphones are highly recommended. Tutorials for all those things can be found in the description. And like I mentioned, we generally recommend that you know a few thousand words and have several hundred hours of immersion before starting intensive listening. As a beginner, there's just too many new words that you don't know, which means that you cannot just understand from listening because you don't know those words. You should be able to recognize whenever you don't know a word, and ideally be able to guess based on what's happening in the other words around it. We recommend that people start their language learning journey with reading, with audio at the same time, but primarily reading, since it's so much easier to make progress and it's a lot more enjoyable for the average person. But that can create a dependency on text, and so that's where intensive listening comes in. If you find yourself with a huge gap between your reading and listening abilities, you should do lots of this intensive listening to close that gap. If you constantly come across words that you know but you just can't hear for some reason, then you definitely should be doing this. I started doing intensive listening with Czech after nearly 500 hours and about 4,000 known words, give or take. I'd almost always been learning with both audio and text, which allowed me to become comfortable with the words and forms and patterns, but I wasn't specifically developing my listening abilities. And now that I am doing intensive listening, I'm transitioning to becoming more comfortable with pure audio. If you're unsure with whether or not you're ready, try doing intensive listening and see how difficult the process is. If it's hard but you still feel like you're learning and it's not too bad, then you're probably at a good level for it. But if it's really difficult and it takes you more than, let's say, 4 times longer to watch a scene, then you're probably not ready yet and you should be doing 3-channel reading instead. And now, without further ado, how do you do intensive listening? The main activity loop is actually very simple. Enable autopause, which is Control P for me, and then listen to a line. Ask yourself, did I hear and understand that? If yes, great job. Press play and continue. If not, then listen again. For ASB Player, you press up on the keyboard to replay a line. Listen to a line up to 3 times before checking the subtitles. Then, if you know all the words but you couldn't hear them, listen again with the subtitles on to help train your ears. But if you don't know a word or two, look them up. However, if you don't know many of the words in the line, it's probably best just to move on. And that's really the whole process. It's not too complicated once you've done it a few times. I do have a few notes and tips and tricks though. The first one is that if you know a sentence is going to be too hard to fully understand, you can just save yourself the trouble and move on. I do this all the time. I'm picky about the sentences that I work on. I frequently hear sentences and know that there's a bunch of words I don't know and then just don't bother. I listen for key words and then try to guess what's happening and move on. And the second tip is that it's totally fine if you can't hear words that you thought you knew. That's the whole purpose of this exercise. And those are actually the best sentences to work on because you have something you can concretely improve, hearing those words. And the third tip is that when you can hear things and confidently say, oh, that's a new word for me, that's also a really good thing. That means that you're processing the other words around it and the sounds well enough to be able to hear the words as they exist. Now, in order to keep this video nice and short, I'm going to leave the explanation there. The rest of the video is a demonstration of me doing intensive listening with a scene from a Czech TV show. I'm going to be narrating over what I was doing because when I was actually doing it live, I was listening and focusing on my task. Before we jump right into the demonstration, let's talk about what you're seeing on your screen. Over here on the left is the actual show that I'm watching. Typically when I'm immersing, this would be in full screen, taking up an entire monitor. However, I want to fit everything on screen for you to see in this video, so it's small. In the bottom left, you're going to see all of the keystrokes that I make on my keyboard. Most of the symbols are self-explanatory, but the squared off U is the spacebar, which is the most important key here. Over on the right-hand side, you'll see me alongside my dictionaries. The main dictionary I use is VocabSiv, and I double-click on the words that show up to look them up. They're showing up automatically because of ASB Player, which I'm using for the video, but that's another tutorial that you can find in the description. When I'm actually immersing, VocabSiv would be totally off screen to the point where I can't even see it, so pretend like it's not there unless I specifically draw attention to it. Alright, let's jump into the live demonstration. Hi, let's do some intensive listening together. Right in front of me, I have a video of me doing some intensive listening just a few minutes ago. And now I'm going to talk you through a few of my thought processes during my intensive listening. I'm going to skip around the scene since I don't need to show you the entire 6-minute video of me immersing, but if you want to see something like that, click the link down below of just a raw demonstration of me doing intensive listening. So let's start with an example of a sentence where all I need to do is look up a word. I'm going to listen to the sentence a few times, and then I'm going to look up a word. So here's the line.
Ano, ty jsi mě volala.
Jo, volala. Já tady koukám na tu kampaň a nevypadá to, že by se lidi o to.
So I got all that, and now I turn on the auto pause. There it is.
Jo, volala. Já tady koukám.
And I want to hear it again. So I listen to it again. Now I realize I didn't hear that quite right. So I replay the sentence a few times, and I check it by turning on the subtitles. Then I turn my attention over to the VocabSiv side and I try to look up the definition. It didn't work, so I'm going to load the definition in my dictionary, and we see that I can see what it means, so then I understand the entire sentence by looking at that new word and combining it with the other words in the sentence. I listen one more time and then I move on. So now let's look at an example of a few sentences where I understood them, but I just needed to check to make sure. I wasn't hearing exactly 100% correctly, but when I looked things up, it was just fine. So these few sentences here, I actually understand just fine, but I wanted to hear again. And then I came over to look up a word. I was nearly positive what it meant, but yeah, like I didn't even go further. And then that I understood, but that part was a little bit fast. And so I listened to it a few times, and then it was okay. I didn't even have to turn on the subtitles, so I moved on. This part, I did look over at the VocabSiv side over here on the right, but I did not need to enable the subtitles because just looking at that was able to help me hear that final word. Because it's actually not in the subtitles, and so that was sort of just a comparison and helping me to hear the thing. And now let's look at an example of when things just go well. I understand what they're saying and what things mean. Almost this entire scene I was able to understand pretty much just fine. And so I just pressed play. I re-listened to a few things a couple times just to make sure. But for the most part, I just press play to continue with the scene and finish out the intensive listening on this scene. I obviously still have auto pause enabled, which is what's pausing after each line, but I just press play to continue going forward. And so that's it. I hope that now you understand a little bit better what intensive listening is, and I'll send you back to the main video. And that's intensive listening. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you learned a little something. If you did, please be sure to subscribe for more videos like this. And when you try intensive listening, write a comment below this video and let us know. How did it go? What did you notice? Did you learn anything cool, or was it harder than you expected? Don't forget to have fun, and happy immersing.
I'm here to drop some knowledge, listen up with your ears. I got a language learning method, gonna make it crystal clear. Call Refold the game changer, gonna blow your mind. Immerse yourself in media, fluency you will find. Refold.